Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we'll continue our discussion of the Nectar of Instruction, text 10. Karme bhaya parito hare prayatya vyaktim yayu jnaninas tebhyo jnana vimukta bhakti parama preme nisthas tatha Tepyasta pashupal pankaj drashas tapyo pisaradhika prestha tadvadyam tadiya sarasi tam nashraye kahakriti. In the Shastras it is said that of all types of fruitive workers, he who is advanced in knowledge of the higher values of life is favored by the Supreme Lord Hari. Out of many such people who are advanced in knowledge, Gyanis, one who is practically liberated by virtue of his knowledge may take to devotional service. He is superior to the others. However, one who has actually attained prema, pure love of Krishna, is superior to him. The gopis are exalted above all the advanced devotees because they are always fully dependent upon Sri Krishna, the transcendental cowherd boy. Among the gopis, Srimati Radharani is most dear to Krishna. Her Kunda lake is as profoundly dear to Lord Krishna as this most beloved of the gopis. Who then will not reside at Radhakund and in a spiritual body surcharged with ecstatic devotional feelings, a prarak bhav, render loving service to the divine couple, Shri Radha Govinda, who perform their Ashtakaliya Leela, their eternal eightfold daily pastimes. Indeed, those who execute devotional service on the banks of Radha Kund are the most fortunate people of the universe. Okay, so a quick recap of how we got here. That in verse 8, Rupa Goswami speaks about the Raghunag Sadhana Bhakti. Then from verse 9, he speaks about further advancements from this this 9, 10 and 11. The advice he gives in verse 9 is to establish the position of Radha Kund as most superior. Right? So he talks about how higher than the material world is Vaikuntha, higher than that is Mathura, higher than that is Vrindavan, higher than that is Govardhan, and topmost is Radha Kund. So he establishes the place of superiority as Radha Kund. In this verse, he will explain why is Radha Kund the best. And there we said that notionally because the intimacy is increasing, and that still remains. But here what Rupa Goswami will do, he will establish the position of Srimati Radharani as the topmost devotee of Krishna. And because Radha Kund is in a way non-different from Srimati Radharani, Radha Kund becomes the topmost place. So first, having stated it empirically, here he inductively establishes the superiority of Radha Kund. Right? So Radha Kund is liquid prema. Right? In a way, it is said that because it embodies the essence of love of Radharani, right? It is the same or even superior to Srimati Radharani. And Rupa Goswami, he starts from the lowest rung of self-realization, right? from the Karambhiya, the Vikarmis, right? And then he goes from there all the way to the position of Srimati Radharani. So Srila Prabhupada talks about these various stages of advancement of consciousness, from the Vikarmis to the Karmis to the Gyanis, Bhaktas, Gopis, and Srimati Radharani. And we will do each one of them in more details. So, so in order to establish the position of Srimati Radharani, Rupa Goswami first starts from the very bottom of the ladder and works his way to the topmost, right? So at the bottom of the ladder are the Vikarmis. They act without Vedic knowledge, right? So they are those who are doing all kind of sinful knowledge, sinful activity, whether it is illicit sex or meat eating, and the destination is they fall down to lower species. Higher than the Vikarmis are the Karmis. So these are those who are materially pious. So they work according to the Karma Kand part of the Vedas. They enjoy piously, they get elevated to higher planets, but they continue to circulate within the material world. Sometimes they'll go to high planets, sometimes they'll fall down, go back again. So in this way, they are circulating in the material universes. Then higher than the karmis are the jnanis who are pursuing the Atmagyan, the knowledge of the self, right? And Rupa Goswami doesn't mention about the yogis, but one can understand that jnanis at some stage of maturity become yogis, so they're kind of in the same category, and they're aspiring for a personal, which is also, even though it may be higher than the material world, it's still temporary. So the point is that unless they take to bhakti, they will eventually fall down over a matter of time. Then Rupa Goswami, he includes the sadhana vaidhi bhaktas, like those who are executing devotional service under regulative principles, right? So when the jnanis exhibit the perfection of jnana, then they take to devotional service. Higher than the bhaktas, the sadhana Veda bhaktas are the Shuddha bhaktas, right? They come to the platform of the spontaneous love of Godhead, and they follow the footsteps of great devotees like Narada and Sanak and Sanatana. So this you can recognize, these are the ones that are at the stage of Ragatmika, the stage of Raghunag sadhana bhaktis, because they're following in the footsteps. But they're the platform of spontaneous love, like that, the platform of raga. Then there are the gopis. The gopis who are pure devotees of Krishna, completely at the platform of spontaneous devotion, and know nothing but service to Krishna. That's their only meditation. They don't want anything in return, right? Whether Krishna is there or not, their love for Krishna is always strong, eternally there, right? So, so the gopis are the perfection of the advancement of Shuddha Bhaktas. Then amongst the gopis, the topmost position is Srimati Radharani. So out of all these exalted gopis, Srimati Radharani is the highest. Why? Because no one can excel the devotional service of Srimati Radharani. And so she has the same mood as the gopis, but she has it a million times more condensed. Right? So the mood of Radharani is so exalted that even Krishna cannot understand her mood. That's why he came as Mahaprabhu, to understand the mood of Radharani. And then, just like Radharani is dear to Krishna, so is her bathing place, Radhakund, equally dear to Krishna. And so now we see how systematically Rupa Goswami has established the topmost position of Radhakund. Right? So this is again the same thing that is said, but with lot of references. Right? Everything that Rupa Goswami says is from the Vedas. So the position of the Vikarmis is given in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.4, that when a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. This is the bottom of the rung, right? The Vikarmis. Then there are the Karmis that are described in 9.21, where it says, when they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the result of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek their enjoyment by adhering to the principle of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So these are the pious karmis who are looking after material enjoyment and going up and down in the different planets. Then the higher than the planets are the Gyanis, right? And 646 in Bhagavad Gita says that a yogi is superior to an ascetic, tapasvi, superior to a Gyani, a person of learning, and even superior to a karmi. Therefore, O Arjun, become a yogi, right? So, as I mentioned, Rupa Goswami uses Gyani to include both Gyanis and yogis over here. Then amongst the yogis or the Gyanis, the most fortunate are those who take to devotional service. Right. So this is mentioned in 719. Bhavanam janmanam te jnanavanma prapadyante vasudeva parmiti samahatma sadurlabha. Right. So these are the jnana mukta vimukta bhakti param. Right. So having attained the perfection of knowledge, they now transcend knowledge, and they're now situated in devotional service. Right. In 555, Sukadeva Goswami says that as long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subject to the miseries arising from ignorance, be it sinful or pious. Karma has its resultant actions. If a person is engaged in any kind of karma, he is called karmatmak, colored with fruitive activity. As long as the mind is impure, consciousness is unclear, and as long as one is absorbed in fruitive activity, he has to accept a material body. But then in 719, after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me. Knowing me to be the cause of all causes, such a great soul is very rare. Right? So now Krishna is speaking about the sadhakas, those who are practicing devotees, Vaidhi Bhakti. Right? But they have understood the position of Krishna. Then amongst the sadhakas are those who have reached the stage of prem or pure devotional service or to Krishna. Among those at the platform of Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotional service, the gopis are at the highest platform. The rasa that they represent, Madhurya, is the highest amongst all the rasas. Right? Like higher than Shanta is Dasya, higher than Dasya is Sakhya, higher than Sakhya is Vatsalya, and higher than Vatsalya is the Madhurya rasa. Right? So it is the topmost rasa, and the particular mood in Vrindavan is Madhurya and Vipralamba, which is even more special because in Dwarka there is Madhurya ras, but there is reciprocation. Krishna is there. So the love of the wives of Krishna is nourished by the association of Krishna. In Vrindavan, Krishna is not even there. He has disappeared, right? So there the love is sustaining on its own in separation. So this is personified by the 8th verse of the Shashtashtakam, where Mahaprabhu he says that Krishna, you have the right to do anything to me, to be present before me or to make me heartbroken by not being present before me. You are my worshipable Lord, life after life. Right? That is the mood of the gopis in Vrindavan. Right? So the hierarchy is the sadhakas, the ragunak bhaktas, and then the ragatmika bhakti in various rasas. Amongst the ragatmika bhakti, the madhurya is the highest. Among madhurya, even higher is the gopi bhav, which is in service to Srimati Radharani, service in separation. Now, highest amongst the gopis is Srimati Radharani. How do we know she is highest? Because she is dearest to Krishna. She completely satisfies Krishna in all respects. So thus all the devotees who have developed unalloyed devotional love for Krishna, the gopis are the most exalted. And out of these exalted gopis, Srimati Radharani is the highest. The quality that distinguishes Radharani is that Krishna loves her the most. No one can excel the devotional service of Srimati Radharani. Indeed, even Krishna cannot understand the attitude of Srimati Radharani. Therefore, he took her position and appeared as Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just to understand her transcendental feelings. Right. So now, all the way from the Vikarmis, Rupa Goswami has established the topmost position of Srimati Radharani, and he now, by association, that because Radha Kund is dearest to Srimati Radharani and Srimati Radharani is dearest to Krishna, that means Radha Kund is the topmost place, right? And um, this is quoted from Laghu Bhagavatāmṛta, quoted in Chaitanya. Just as Srimati Radharani is dear to the Supreme Lord Krishna, Vishnu, so her bathing place Radha Kund is equally dear to Krishna. Among all the gopis, she alone stands supreme as the Lord's most beloved. Right? So this is essentially the verse that establishes the position of Radha Kund. In the translation, Srila Prabhupada also makes a note of living in Radha Kund in the mood of service to Krishna in the Ashtakalya Leela. Right? So even though it's not there in the Sanskrit, Srila Prabhupada extends, and this is, Prabhupada doesn't talk about it in the purport, so I'm not going to talk about it. But for those of you who are interested, this is based on the writing of various Vaishnavacharyas like Rupa Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. They give a summary of what the Ashtakali Leela is. So essentially, the day is divided into eight parts. Each one of them is 2 hours and 24 minutes, and beginning from the Nishant Leela, when Radha Krishna awaken. So in each of the kals, there is Krishna associating with a particular set of his devotees in a particular mood. Right? There's him associating with Radharani in the mood of Madhurya. Then in the Purvahan Leela, he is in the forest of Raja in Sakhya Bhav with the friends. Then in the Madhyan Leela, he again goes back to Radha Kund and he meets Srimati Radharani there. Then in the Sayan Leela, again Radha and Krishna meet. Then in the Pradosh Leela, there is the Ras Leela. In the Nisha Leela, there is again. So there is these eternal pastimes that are happening. So the conclusion is that anyone interested in Krishna consciousness should ultimately, in the end, when one is ready, it's not an option, take shelter of Radha Kund and execute devotional service there throughout one's life. Right? So the point is, it's not that we should rush to live in Radha Kund because we are not ready for that, but that should be our aspiration. That we are sadhakas, at some point we aspire to become sadhak raguna bhaktas, and then we aspire to develop bhava and prem. At that point we should aspire to live in Radha Kund. Also does not mean that we cannot live there. If we live there, we continue to live there with that aspiration, that I may be able to appreciate Radha Kund for what it is. Right? So this is the conclusion of Rupa Goswami in the 10th verse of Upadeśāmṛta. Okay, so with this we conclude the 10th verse of the Nectar of Instruction. Thank you so much. We will now continue with the 11th verse of the NOI. So we will now do the last verse of the Nectar of Instruction, text 11. So the meter of this is a little difficult. It's called Shakdhara Chanda, 21 syllables per line, generally broken into 3 subdivisions, but one that is almost like prose, a little difficult to chant it. Okay, so text 11. Krishnasya cha pranaya vasati prayasibhyo perata kundam cha samunabhi abitas tatrga eva vidhyayi yat prestirapyalma asulabham kim pune bhakti bhajam tad premedam sakrat api saraha snaturavikshkaroti. Of the many objects of flavored delight and of all the lovable damsels of Rajabhumi, Srimati Radharani is certainly the most treasured object of Krishna's love. And in every respect, her divine kunda is described by great sages as similarly dear to him. Undoubtedly, Radha Kund is very rarely attained even by the great devotees. Therefore, it is even more difficult for ordinary devotees to attain. If one simply bathes once within those holy water, one's pure love for Krishna is fully aroused. So, in the 9th verse, Rupa Goswami, he talks about the superior position of Radha Kund. Right? He says how higher than the material world is Vaikuntha, higher than Vaikuntha is Mathura, higher than Mathura is Vrindavan, Govardhan, and then Radha Kund. Then in verse 10, he says that the reason Radha Kund is highest is because it is dearest to Srimati Radharani, and he established the topmost position of Radharani. So he goes through the various level of advancements of the Vikarmis, Karmis, Jnanis, the sadhakas, then the gopis, and then ultimately the topmost gopi, which is Srimati Radharani. And the position of Radharani is topmost because she is dearest to Krishna, and no one can match the service that she renders to Krishna. So now he has established two things. Radharani is the topmost devotee, Radha Kund is the topmost place. Right? So this verse essentially, as you saw, it summarizes the previous two verses. It basically is reiterating the same point. Radha Kund is the topmost position, Radha Rani is the topmost devotee. So the recommendation is that you reside in Radha Kund, and here he actually further glorifies the position by saying even once you take bath. Right? So in the 10th verse he says that one should live in the Radha Kund by regularly taking bath over there and making advancement. But here he says that it is so advanced that even once if you take bath, that is sufficient. So the summary of the verse is that it is a conclusion of the previous two verses and represents the highest destination given by the nectar of instruction, and repetition is an ornament of emphasis. And many times we see that Krishna will repeat the same point once, twice, thrice in different ways when he wants to make the emphasize on the same point. Similarly, Rupa Goswami, he is emphasizing on the position of Radha Kund, and he is repeating to emphasize that. So previous verse were comparators, right? The previous verse we saw that Radha Kund was compared to the other places, to the material world, to Vaikuntha, etc. Srimati Radharani was compared to other grades of jivas, to the Vikarmis, Karmis, etc. Here he is simply glorifying. So now his mood is not really to say that because of this reason, because there are tinges of logic over there. Now he's completely nivritti, he's completely free of all that mentality of let me try and justify it, etc. He's just in the mood of ecstasy, right? He's just saying that Radharani is the greatest, Radha Kund is the greatest. Devotees who live in Radha Kund, take bath over there, are the most fortunate. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, short purport, he talks about why Radha Kund is special, right? And who lives in Radha Kund. So as for Bhakti Vedanta Thakur and Bhakti Sastri Thakur, how do they live there? And what is the result? So we'll do a little bit deeper dive into this. So why Radha Kund? Already established, right? Radharani is the most beloved of the gopis. She expresses Mahabhav that bewilders even Krishna. And Radha Kund is greatest because it is the dear place of Radharani, as dear to Krishna as Radha herself. It has unlimited glories and it is rarely attained. Who are qualified to live there? So Bhakti Vinod Thakur makes this point that those who are interested in advanced devotional service, in this particular mood of Gopi Bhav, right? So there is a very particular mood that attracts the devotees to that place, and that mood is Gopi Bhav. What is Gopi Bhav? Rendering service to Srimati Radharani so that she can render service to Krishna. And this is unique to those who are in the protection of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and who of course are eager to go back to Godhead to perfect the spiritual life. Bhakti Sastri Thakur says, not just ordinary devotees, like not even exalted devotees like Narad Muni or Shanaka. Like Sanaka is one of the four Kumaras, perfect in knowledge. Narad Muni personifies bhakti, but more in the Aishwarya Bhav. So one might say that if not for Narad, not for Sanak, what hope there is for us? So why does Rupa Goswami even talk about it? He talks about it because it is important to establish aspirational goals. That is important. Today it may seem that it is beyond our realm, right? And that would be the right way to think. But it also means that we should develop the desire. Unless we do not develop the desire, then we cannot move to it. Right? It's like a student may want to clear an exam that's very difficult, and he may say, I know nothing about that exam. But the journey starts with the desire to clear that exam. And then he studies and studies and studies, and eventually he's able to clear the exam. So it all starts with the desire. So these verses have been put there to invoke the desire in us. And we are fortunate that being followers of Mahaprabhu, we have been given that benediction, the Namo Mahavadanyaya, right? So Mahaprabhu is so munificent, he is so kind to us that he has bestowed on us this avenue of taking the highest destination. It begins with a desire which is kindled by these verses. Then how do the devotees live in Radha Kund? Give up material conceptions. There is no place for any material conceptions of karma, jnana, stang, etc. There, loving service of the Lord, right? So there is not even really place for Vaidhi Bhakti. Right? So it's basically bhava and prem and gopi bhava, right? So specifically, the mood is to serve the gopis, to serve Radharani, to serve Krishna. And what else? You bathe as many times as possible, understanding it is non-different from the prema of Radharani, liquid prema, considering it to be the most important devotional service. So earlier on, when Prabhupada disciples of Prabhupada, they understood this position of Radha Kund, so they would go there and take bath. And then Prabhupada found out that they were diving in over there, they were doing backstrokes, and they were young kids, so they were having fun over there. And Prabhupada did not like that, so then he forbade that do not go into Radha Kund to take a bath, but you can take some water and put it on your head. It's as good as taking a bath. So most of the time that's what the devotees do. But still there are devotees who do enter the water and take bath with the understanding that while they still have contaminated consciousness, they're praying for the mercy of Srimati Radharani. So what is the result? Pure love of Krishna in the mood of the gopis, right? And Rupa Goswami here, he becomes even more compassionate. See, even bathing once with the proper conception, that is enough. Then why would the person bathe again and again? Because it nourishes that conception, that ecstasy increases, right? And the result is the person will return back to the spiritual world. In a way, the person is already in the spiritual world, but he will go from the aprakrit to the prakrit lila of Radha Krishna, and there he will serve Krishna under the supervision of the gopis. So this is the particular mood that the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu aspire to cultivate. So the conclusion is to live on the banks of Radha Kund and bathe there daily. That constitutes the highest perfection of devotional service. Thus, there is no limit to the glory of Radha Kund. By serving Radha Kund, one can get an opportunity to become an assistant of Srimati Radharani under the eternal guidance of gopis and thus attain perfection. So this brings us to the end of the verse 11 of Nectar of Instruction. This brings us to the end of Nectar of Instruction. So at this point, we will do a quick recap of the 11 verses of Nectar of Instruction. Okay, so at the conclusion of the NOI, we will now do a quick summation of it. So, as we had discussed the Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami takes us all the way from Shraddha to Prem in 11 verses, right? The first 3 verses are in the category of Shraddha or faith. In the first verse, Rupa Goswami, he introduces us to the 6 Vegas, the 6 pushings that one must aspire to control. Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udara Prastha Vegam, Etan Vega Yo, Vishaheta Dhira. Right? He says one should aspire to become a Dhira by controlling these 6 pushings. Vacho Vegam of speech, Manasa Krodha Vegam, mind and anger, and so on. The 6 Vegas are there. And this verse is more in the area of morality. Right? It's not really, it's the gateway to spirituality. And the verse also, so Rupa Goswami says the one who can control the 6 Vegas is now qualified to make spiritual masters, is qualified to be the spiritual master of everyone. Right? So it's also the verse that introduces us to the qualities of the spiritual master if you are aspiring to take shelter. Okay. In the second verse, he talks about the 6 things that destroy one's bhakti. So now he starts talking about devotional service. Right? So he talks about the 6 things: the atyahara, priyashchascha, prajalpaniyam, agra. So the injunction over there is to avoid these 6 things. Right? In the third verse, he talks about the 6 things that nourish bhakti. Utsaha, nishya, dhairya, tat karma, pravartat, jansankaso, shatovrata, shadbir bhakti, prasidhyati. The second verse is sadbir bhakti vinashyati. Right? So he's talked about things that nourish bhakti, things that destroy or impede the flow of bhakti. Then beginning from the 4th verse, he talks about the importance of devotee association. That how does one follow the do's and avoid the don'ts? Right? He has given 6 do's and 6 don'ts. How does one actually do it? He says you do it in the association of devotees. How do you associate with the devotees? Right? So the 6 loving exchanges between the devotees is given in text for Dadati Pratigranati, Goyam Akte Prachati, Bhakte Bhojate Cheva, Shadbir Priti Lakshanam. So these 6 loving exchanges is the way that devotees will deal with one another. Right? So this is now in the category of sadhu sangha. Then he expands on the nature of the association in verses 5 and 6. So in the verse 5, he speaks about the grades of devotees. There's Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyam and Uttam Adhikari. And he advises that one distinguishes between this category of the devotees and basically determine how to associate. That to the Kanishta one pays mental obeisances from afar, one gives the mercy. Madhyam Adhikari, one takes association. Uttam Adhikari, one serves. Right? So the importance of understanding where the devotees are situated, where oneself is situated. Right? So that's the focus in the 5th verse. In the 6th verse, the point is made that the spiritual master or the Uttam Adhikaris, they should be considered to be free from all material defects. apparent material defects like low birth or bodily defects, etc. Why? Because they are on the spiritual platform. Right? So we see the progression that he talks about how to practice bhakti, what to be careful to avoid when practicing bhakti, practice in the association of devotees, how to properly take and give association, and then ultimately take shelter of the spiritual master. So from text 7, bhajan kriya becomes, right? Bhajan kriya is when one takes shelter of spiritual master and starts executing devotional service under the instructions of the spiritual master. So text 7 essentially is the verse that introduces the devotee to the chanting of the holy name. And this essentially takes one all the way from bhajan kriya to anartha nivritti, nishtha and ruchi. This is where the devotees spend most of their life or many lifetimes. As they do bhajan kriya, as they chant, they go from they go from namaprad to namabhas to ultimately shuddhanam, and then they progress through the stages of anartha nivritti, getting devoid of all their shortcomings, their faults, the anarthas, the six faults that are spoken earlier. Nishtha is developing stronger faith, and ruchi is now developing a taste. So that brings us to the 8th verse, where the devotee is now beginning to feel spontaneous love for the Lord. Right? Until text 7, the focus is on the process. Right? So you see that from verses 1 to 6, Krishna is not there. In verse 1, even Bhakti is not there. But until 6, Krishna is not really there. The focus is more on how to deal with Krishna's devotees. So the sadhakas, their focus is on sadhana. So that's what verses 1 to 7 talk about. That how do you practice bhakti, sadhana vedi bhakti. But the process will take one to the point where the focus now is the object of the sadhana, which is Krishna. So asakti is also the stage of ragunag sadhana bhakti, where now one has raga, where one now has spontaneous. But the spontaneous is also cultivated as a sadhana. Just like vidhi, earlier on, the process was cultivated as sadhana, the do's and the don'ts. Now the spontaneity is cultivated by following the footsteps of the ragatmikas. And text 9, 10, and so text 8, Rupa Goswami says, is that itisar, Upadeśāmṛta. This is the essence of all the instructions, that one should develop spontaneous loving devotion for Krishna. Text 9, 10 and 11, they speak about further perfection, right? So text they talk about the advancement to bhava and prema. And here Rupa Goswami, he talks about the conduct of devotees who are advanced beyond the stage of ragunag sadhana bhakti. Right? So he introduces in the verse 9, he introduces Radha Kund as the topmost place, like he taught in terms of grades, all the way from the material world to Vaikuntha. Higher than Vaikuntha is Mathura, higher than Mathura is Vrindavan, then Govardhan, and topmost is Radha Kund. Why? And then in the verse 10 he says, because Radha Kund is dear to Srimati Radharani. And there he goes through the level of spiritual advancement. There's the Vikarmis, Karmis, Gyanis, the Sadhakas. After the Sadhakas are those who are doing in pure devotion, the Gopis, and the topmost amongst the Gopis is Srimati Radharani. So Srimati Radharani is the topmost devotee of Krishna, and her kunda is dear to her and to Krishna also, so that is the topmost place. So in verse 11, then he summarizes. He says that who will not aspire to live in Radha Kund and take bath over there, and in this mode serve the divine couple. That is our goal. That is where we, under the protection of Guru Maharaj, under the protection of Srila Prabhupada, and taking advantage of the munificence, the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's our aspiration. So with that, we end our discussion on Upadeśāmṛta, Nectar of Instruction. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.